Hi Mindsetters, grade 10s, welcome back. So sorry. I'm so excited for an amazing lesson today. We've got lots of exciting things to chat about. We're going over cells, catching up on what we spoke about last week. So guys, get those questions in on our Facebook page. Start chatting to us and I'll let Kathy know if there's anything that you're struggling with. Kathy, take it away.
Okay, hi guys and girls. What we have to do first though is to just recap what we did last week. We did the basics of an animal cell and a plant cell. The most important difference between an animal and a plant cell is that a plant cell contains a cell wall. And remember that that cell wall is made of cellulose and it has huge holes in it, so it is completely permeable. It's like having big pillars and a whole bunch of people walking in between those pillars. That is what happens with a cell wall. It's there to give structure and it's there to help keep the shape of the plant cell. All right. Then we had the cell membrane, and we spoke about the cell membrane, the double phospholipid rows with the proteins and then the protein channels for active transport. We went through osmosis, we went through diffusion, and we went through active transport. Now, just to recap, because you must know this, all right? Osmosis is the movement of water, not any other substance, only water, from a higher water potential to a lower water potential along the concentration gradient, because it's going downhill, along the concentration gradient through a partially permeable membrane. If water moves anywhere else and it doesn't move through a membrane, then it is not osmosis, it's diffusion. All right, so if I have water and it evaporates out of a glass, that is diffusion. It's moving out. It's not going through a membrane, it's going from where there is more to where there is less. Okay, diffusion is the movement of any substance, including water, from a higher concentration to a lower concentration along the concentration gradient until an equilibrium is reached. So that should tell you that in osmosis, we talk about water potential. The water must move through a membrane, and you never, ever, ever reach an equilibrium. Not ever. Because what makes the water's potential less is to add solutes. And if you add those, like sugar, if you add solutes that dissolve in the water, it lowers the water's potential. And you can't, those solutes can't move through the membrane. So you can never ever have an equilibrium in osmosis. And it is water only moving through a partially permeable membrane. Diffusion, an equilibrium will be reached. It will carry on until there is an equilibrium. In other words, the substances are even on both sides. Okay, and then we have active transport. Now, active transport was our little guy with his skateboard, and he had to walk up the hill. His skateboard he couldn't ride his skateboard up the hill. He had to pick it up and walk up the hill. All right, so the analogy is that it is the movement of any substance from a low concentration to a high concentration against the concentration gradient, because it's going uphill, and we need a carrier molecule, all right, and lots of energy. So the little guy ends up being the carrier molecule. The skateboard, in the analogy, is the substance. So a carrier molecule and the energy to go against the concentration gradient. All right, let's get to our plant cell. We had the cell wall, and then we had the cell membrane, which was the structure there. There's your cell wall, cell membrane, all right? And the cell membrane is partially permeable, where the cell wall was completely permeable. So substances sort of go along, they go through the cell wall, and then the cell membrane says, you have to be small enough to fit through our little holes here. Okay, and those little holes are created by those protein channels. All right, and in between the phospholipids. So, cell membrane, which animal cells have as well. And then you've got the mush, and the mush in the cell is the cytoplasm. So, let's do it here. All right, we're going to do all of this in detail now. And basically, when we talk about the protoplasm of the cell, the protoplasm is made up of the cytoplasm with all the organelles that are in the cytoplasm and the nucleus. So remember that term. Protoplasm means the cytoplasm with all the organelles and the nucleus, which is then separated. If we look here, there are mitochondria, and we have our nucleus over here, and the Golgi apparatus, and the smooth and rough endoplasmatic reticulum, and we have a mitochondria. Here's the Golgi body here, and then we have these little structures that are in there, and this whole large, the whole large structure, this whole big thing in the middle here is called the vacuole. Okay, let's choose another color. The vacuole. Now, the vacuole is what I'm going to do next. Is filled with what we call cell sap. And cell sap is a combination of water and mineral salts. So we've got in here, we've got water and we've got our mineral salts. Okay, that sits and makes up part of the cell sap. Now, around the outside of a vacuole is the tonoplast. So this membrane on the outside here, let's just, I'm going to do it like this. That membrane is also partially permeable, all right? And it's called the tonoplast. I'm going to write it here because it doesn't look too good on the black. The tonoplast. So the tonoplast is the membrane of the vacuole. And it's the vacuole that basically helps to make sure that this cell is full, that it's turgid, that it has support, and it helps with turgid pressure. All right, now, if we look at our structures, and I'm actually going to take you to, This is, and you can go and have a look. You can find it at www.cellsalive.com. So this is at cells with an S, Cells Alive. Indy will put it onto the Facebook for you.
Well.
Please go and have a look there because it's got all kinds of little things that you can watch. Now, what we've got here is our interactive animal and plant cells. We're just looking at the plant cell at the moment. And it will tell you here the nucleus, so you tap on that, and it gives you the information about the nucleus. And we go back to the plant cell. And, hang on.
And you can't get back to the plant.
No,
Let's see.
Animal, plant, and I've somehow done.
Oh, there. Click on interactive cell models. It should take you straight to, take me to the animation.
There's my plant cell. Okay, so the nucleus, there's your nucleus. All right, we're not going to use the interactive. And what I'm going to do now, I'd like you to do this at home. It's a bit difficult for me to do it here because the writing is in white and the lines are sometimes in yellow, which you saw now you can't see well. So you need to go and do this at home. It's actually lovely. So you push on the nucleus or the nucleolus and it will tell you where all the organelles are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where I was and I'm going to go to here. And this is a line diagram of a plant cell. And if I was your teacher, okay, you would get this to label and to tell me functions of structures in a test. and I would make you draw and label this plant cell in 5 minutes. Because if you've mastered that, you basically know what the structures are and where they are. Once you know that, you can then draw this on a A4 that you open up. You pull the middle out of a book, and you do your diagram in the middle, and then where all your labels are, you write in the functions of each of the structures. So if we look here, the cell wall, what is its job? Its job is to give structure and support, not anything with regard to things moving in and out of the cell. All right, if we look at the cell membrane, which is over there, all around the cell here, there's your cell membrane. Its function is to be semi-permeable. Let's take our color, and I'm going to just, now that makes it black, let's give it blue, pink. So there's the cell membrane, and it sits right up against the cell wall. If it doesn't, it means that the little cell is dehydrating. And if the little cell dehydrates, we have a problem because it loses its shape. So there's the cell membrane. Okay? Then after the cell membrane, there's the cell membrane in pink. Now we're going to look at each part separately. I've already told you this is the vacuole. All right? And the vacuole, let's find another color here. Green, there's your vacuole. And the membrane around the vacuole, all right, is the tonoplast, and the vacuole itself includes the tonoplast, so please be careful when you have to label it, and your teacher actually wants you to label vacuole, or your teacher wants you to label tonoplast. So the way to come around that is you say, that's the tonoplast, okay, and it's the membrane around the vacuole, and it is filled with cell sap, which is in the middle, that's the liquid, and you bracket it and say that the whole thing is then the vacuole. All right, now, we've got all this mush in between, and that mush in between is called the cytoplasm, and I'm looking here we go. Here's the label for cytoplasm. Now, when the cytoplasm, in some books, they'll refer to the cytosol, which means the cytoplasmic solution. It still refers to the cytoplasm, all right? So it's the cytoplasm, the cytoplasmic solution, or cytosol. But that's your cytoplasm. It's the mush into which everything else, or in which everything else floats, all right? Now, we've got our vacuole. Biggest function in a plant is to keep the water and maintain structure within the cell. Then you have the Golgi, these are inane little structures. Your Golgi body, and your Golgi body is just a whole bunch of little double-folded membranes, and their job is to make sure that it disperses useful substances through the cell, and it collects any waste substances as well. All right, so that's its job. The Golgi body just distributes substances across the cell. Then we have, let me see here. I want easy ones for now. You've got the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and you have your rough endoplasmic reticulum, which would be this little one over there. There's another little one over there. And your rough endoplasmic reticulum, let's just do the endoplasmic reticulum, is also just a number of folds or tubules, which end up, and it's just made up of a whole bunch of membranes. And its job is also to make sure that things are transported to the cells, especially proteins. All right. Sitting on the endoplasmic reticulum, you've got rough and you've got smooth. Now remember, please, and take note of this, you can call it ER. Okay, and that's not emergency room. ER is your endoplasmic reticulum. And if it is rough ER, it has ribosomes on it. Now, people, you have to know this, and it's very important for grade 11 and for grade 12. A ribosome produces proteins. It is part of protein synthesis. And when you get to grade 12, you're going to be very glad that you remember it from now, and that it's gone into your head and it's stuck there. Okay? So when the ER has ribosomes on it, we call it rough endoplasmic reticulum. And when there aren't any ribosomes, well, hello, it's smooth. So guess what? We call it smooth ER. Not difficult. Just do it bit for bit. All right? So we've done that, done that, done that. Okay, now we're going to go, because remember we're doing the protoplasm. So we're doing everything that's in the cytoplasm, and then we're going to do the nucleus. And the nucleus is awesomely, awesomely important in everything that you do. All right? I'm going to go through the chloroplast with you. Now I'm going to keep the green. The chloroplast is this little structure here. Okay? And if we go back to our little cell over here, it's these things that were in green over here. So you don't just have one chloroplast, you're going to have many chloroplasts. All right, and those chloroplasts are incredibly, incredibly important. Why? Because that is how the plant makes its food. All right, so how does it look? We have this little chloroplast, and it's a double membrane structure. So it's got this little membrane, and if you recall, all membranes are made up of a double row of phospholipids. Okay, so it's partially permeable, and it's this double membrane. Let me just write here, chloroplast. Now, you only get plasts in plant cells. You get your chloroplasts are green. You get your chromoplasts, which will give color to a flower or color to fruit or vegetables. Okay, so those are your chromoplasts, and chromoplasts are red, orange, and yellow. And then you get your leucoplasts, and your leucoplasts are, and I think I should actually write these down. Let's just do that. Okay, for your plast, you've got your chloroplasts, and they are green, and their job is to photosynthesize. You've got your chromoplasts. Now we talk about chromatography. Chromatography means to work with color. Okay, so chromoplasts are red, yellow, and orange, and that gives you your color of your flowers and your fruit. And then you have your leucoplasts. Okay, and your leucoplasts are colorless, and they can become chloroplasts, for example. Now, I'm sure you've seen at home when you've had a bag of potatoes. And if you take a while to eat those potatoes, when you get to the last few at the bottom, when you take the potato out, you'll see that it's got like little knobs on it, which are like little growths on it. Those are called eyes, and that's part of vegetative reproduction. All right? But more importantly is that, so those are the eyes. But if you look at the potato, it starts to get a green color. And that greenish color is because the leucoplasts, they are colorless. They're starting to turn green. Why? So that they can start, when this potato has light, they can start to photosynthesize and produce some more food. Also, your leucoplasts help with generally you'll find them in and around starch storage. All right, so that's why they work nicely on potatoes. Okay, so chloroplast. Now, this little structure, let's do the structure first and then its function. In here, we've got little layers of discs. And these little discs, each little disc is called a thylakoid. Okay? And you have a stack, and you'll have another stack here, and another stack here. And each little stack of thylakoids is called a granum. All right, so you've got your granum, and each little thylakoid stack, 1 granum. There are 4 grana here. So I'm going to just put here that I've drawn there are 4 grana. Now, a chloroplast can have hundreds of grana. I'm just drawing 4. So grana is plural, granum is 1. And then they've got these intergranal threads, which sort of link the little grana to each other. Okay, inter, between, granal. So intergranal threads. And they link the grana together. And the area that's in between the grana, that area is called the stroma. And then we're going to find, I'm going to use the yellow here, and I hope you can see it. Those will be little droplets of lipids or fats. Okay? And there'll be little proteins and all kinds of things, but the little fat droplets are quite important. So that's what we have in the chloroplast. And the chloroplast's job is photosynthesis. Now, if we look at the process of photosynthesis, let's move this down. And you don't have to know all the detail. You do that later. But photosynthesis. Okay? And photo means light. Synthesis means to make. Now remember, plants are autotrophic. Which means that the plants produce their own food. Okay? You don't see plants with a mouth and a digestive system. Your Venus flytraps, yes, but and a couple of those kind of coniferous plants. But for the rest, plants are autotrophic. They produce their own food. And I can see Indy sitting smiling. So Indy, are you following, darling?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking I wish I was autotrophic.
But you'd have to lie in the sun all day. Otherwise, you would have no energy.
I suppose, and I'd be giving up nice, delicious food, wouldn't I?
Yeah, but apart from the fact that you'd end up with skin cancer, okay?
Not if I was a plant. Then surely I would be made to do that, you know, like
I suppose
genetically modified.
You'd be genetically modified, or you'd have adaptations to do that. All right.
Fantastic. Kathy,
so, yes.
Let's take a break because I do have
a
few questions, guys. Thank you so much for sending in your questions. I'm going to get Kathy to have a look through them so she can go over them. I think there are a few things that you have been through already, so maybe we can just answer them on the page. Guys, keep those questions coming. If there's anything that Kathy's been talking about that maybe you're not understanding, you want us to go into a bit more in depth, please let us know. Let's take a break. Don't leave those seats. We'll be back right now. Welcome back, Grade 10 Mindsetters. I hope you're having a fab lesson. I know you are because Kathy is doing a fantastic job. We've got such exciting things happening in these lessons. So guys, make sure that you stay tuned and that you get those questions in. We do have a few questions on the page. Kathy is going to start going through them right now. I know that Shwari has a question about Plasmodesmata, which Kathy is going to tackle right now. So Kathy, over to you.
All right, people, I remember this diagram. Plasmodesmata would be this structure here, and I don't think you can see it, so let me get pink. There we go. And it's basically a little pathway between and linking the different cell walls. All right, so it's like a pathway between the cells. All right, which just assists with any substances that are rather large that have to be moved in and out between the cells. So it's like a communication process between the cells. All right, now one of the other questions that was asked, I just want to get to my, no man, Let me just find where I've been drawing. Is that it? No, 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 no. Here we go. Okay, was the functions of a chloroplast. I'm about to do that, and the functions of the mitochondria I'm going to do straight after the chloroplast.
She's getting there, she's getting there.
Okay, so you've got to just give me a chance here. I'm trying to do it as thoroughly as I possibly can. So we're doing the chloroplast, you've done the structure. Please, you've got the grana and you've got the stroma. Now, what's really important is that the stroma is for the dark phase of photosynthesis. Now, the dark phase doesn't require light, so we can also call it the light independent phase. It's independent of light. It's going to happen anyway, whether there's a sun shining or not. And then the grana are responsible for the light phase. And you must know the two phases. Okay, so the light phase takes place in the grana, and the dark phase takes place in the stroma. Okay, now what is photosynthesis? And I think that's where we were here. Okay, photosynthesis is something that plants do in order to make food. All right? What is happening here? Okay, there we go. Plants are autotrophic. Being autotrophic, they produce their own food. They are going to use light to make food in two phases. But what happens is the plant will take sunlight energy, we can also call it radiant energy, plus it takes water, and that water is from the soil. It's absorbed by the roots. Remember, all photosynthesis happens mainly in the leaves where the chloroplasts are. So we have sunlight energy that gives us our ATP. We have the water from the soil, and we have carbon dioxide from the air. Okay? This then is used in the chloroplast for a process called photosynthesis. And what happens is that during photosynthesis, or the process, I'm just going to write here, just fix that, photosynthesis, and clearly there are all kinds of enzymes that are involved because no reactions take place without enzymes. You've got to remember that, hey? All catabolic building and all anabolic building and all catabolic breaking down processes in a plant and in an animal happen because of enzymes. Okay, now here we are building something. We're going to make food. This is how the plant makes food. So this photosynthesis is clearly an anabolic process. Okay, it's a building process. Anabolic, it's a building. Just to remind you, please never call it building, but it's a building process. Okay, so the plant's going to take sunlight energy from the sun. It's going to take water from the soil, and it's going to take carbon dioxide from the air, and all of this is going to happen because of enzymes in the grana and the stroma of the chloroplast, and we are going to end up with glucose and oxygen. The oxygen is released into the air, so that goes back into the air, and that gives us our oxygen. And your and your glucose is made up of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. So it's your hydrogen to oxygen ratio is always 2:1, remember people. For glucose, hydrogen, because it's a carbohydrate, and it is a monomer, it's a monosaccharide. So what do we have? You've got your carbon, your hydrogens, and your oxygen. It actually is C6H12O6. So is it a carbohydrate? How do we know? Definitely. Why? Because the hydrogen to oxygen ratio is always 2:1. And you will have learnt that the glucose molecule is a monosaccharide. It is a monomer or a basic building block of a carbohydrate. So the plant is going to use the energy from the sun, that's ATP. It's going to use the water from the soil, so that's your H2O. That's where your hydrogens and your oxygens are going to come from to go to your glucose. Okay? And your carbon from the carbon dioxide is going to be used to make the glucose. And this oxygen here from the carbon dioxide is going to be all part of this whole process. So we've got our oxygen is released into the air, and the glucose is then stored. And remember, when we store the glucose in a plant, lots of glucose molecules by polymerization. Come on, these are your organic compounds you had to learn. By polymerization, we are going to end up with a big molecule which has to be stored in plants, and that would be starch. Okay, starch. Now the starch granules, remember, are going to be all around inside that plant cell as well. Okay, so that's photosynthesis and the chloroplast. This happens in the chloroplast. Now if we go back to our cell and we say, okay, that's our chloroplast done, but what are these things here? And these funny things that sort of look like there's a little wormy thing on the inside, what is that? So it's okay, well, let's go back to our original cell diagram. No. Okay, I can't remember where I put it, so don't worry about it. Let's just get a blank page here, and we say, all right. What we're going to do now is we're going to be looking at the Mitochondrion is 1, and if it's chondria, then it's many. So just be careful, because you could have a teacher that's quite pernickety, and if that teacher's pernickety and you talk about the mitochondria and there are 20 of them, she's going to say, no, 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 mitochondrion is 1, mitochondria many. Right, now, what is the mitochondria's job? And it's going to be the same in the animal cell, remember? Animal cells don't have chloroplasts. Do we look green? No. Not even the little guys on the moon and the aliens are green, really. Okay? But, so we've got no plastids. We've got no chloroplasts, leucoplasts, or chromoplasts in an animal cell. But we all have mitochondria. Why? Because the mitochondrion is called the powerhouse of a cell. Okay, it's the powerhouse. Now, what do we get from a powerhouse? A powerhouse, we would think, provides energy. And cell energy is in the form of something called ATP. And you would have noticed I wrote ATP just now when we were doing the chloroplast and photosynthesis. I said that ATP, you've got radiant energy, and I put in brackets ATP. It supplies the energy for the process. Okay, so what is ATP? So we're going to first do this, and then we're going to go on to the whole process. ATP is an adenosine molecule, okay, which is a protein, and a phosphate that attaches to it. So there's your adenosine, and this would be adenosine di-2-phosphate. Okay? And there's energy that sits here in the bond between the phosphates and the adenosine molecule. Then we've got something that makes energy. So this little ADP molecule goes to where there is energy. And this energy is just going sugar. It's all over the show. So what the ADP does is it says, hold on, bring that energy, bring me a little phosphate that's floating around, and I have ADP plus that little phosphate. So now my molecule goes phosphate, phosphate, and phosphate. And it uses this energy to bond that third little phosphate. Now, my ADP plus a phosphate is equal to adenosine triphosphate. Because how many phosphates do I have there? I have 3. 1, 1, 2, 3. And it goes to where we have to release the energy, or where the energy is needed, somewhere in the cell. Okay? And there's my little adenosine, and one little ATP will break off, and the energy that was in this bond, that is then released, so that it can be used in that part of the cell or wherever it is. Okay, so that's how ATP is made. So what is the job of this little mitochondria? It's the powerhouse of the cell, which means it gives the cell energy. How? Okay, let's look at the structure.
I've got a quick question for you.
Yep.
Okay, Pearl wants to know, Kathy, what are the substances of the cell sap?
Water and dissolved mineral salts and nutrients. Okay, cool. Dissolved mineral salts, nutrients, and clearly if they're dissolved in something, the fluid or the solvent is water. Okay, and that is also why water will only ever move, and this you're going to do in absolute detail later on, water will only ever move into the root hair. Okay, the root hair in the roots that absorb 80% of the water in a plant, it's because of the water here on the outside and the osmosis occurring. So you've got a higher water potential outside and a lower water potential in the root hair. Why? It has a huge vacuole. And that huge vacuole is, and I can just see Indiana smiling, is filled with cell sap. And that cell sap's got all these dissolved nutrients, which then ensures that the water outside the root has a higher water potential than the water inside the root. And that's what pulls the water into the root. And once it's in that root hair, it's got no option but to just go zooting up till it gets to the xylem vessel. All right, now in grade 11, you're going to do all the skeleton and the structure and the transport system in plants. And then you're going to have to know the xylem vessel and the root hairs and water transport and blah, 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 blah. But if you don't learn this, you're going to battle. All right, so let's get back to our mitochondria and being energy. Again, it has a double membrane. Okay, why? Because we are eukaryotic and it's a multicellular structure. So what have we got? We've got our double membrane, which sits in the cytoplasm. Wait, hold on. Let's just do this again. I don't know why I did it like that. You've got your outer membrane and you have your inner membrane, which is what makes it look like it's got a worm stuck in there. Okay? Now, the minute I take anything, people, and we've gone through this, and here I've got my wire. Okay, can you see this wire? And I'm going to hold it over my pink top. Okay? If I want to take this, it's about 30 centimeters, and I want to squash it and I want to increase the surface area, I can fit 30 of these lengths into this piece because I put a fold in it, which means I can put another fold in it, which I can put another fold in it, and I can put another fold in it until I've got pretty much all the wiring that I have around me here, and they're all on 30 centimeters. So I've increased that surface area 4 times, and I'm holding it here in my hand. So the fact that we have these folds are called cristae. Okay, and the cristae, those folds, main function, increase surface area. And you must know this because they love asking it. All right? Now, those are your cristae. This is your outer membrane. All right? And then inside here you'll have a little ribosome and you'll have all kinds of little inclusions in there. Now, between the outer membrane and this inner membrane, stuff happens. And the stuff that happens between those 2 membranes is phase 1. And I'm going to put here phase 1. It's between these 2. Phase 1 of the whole process of cellular respiration. Now the word tells you what it is. I mean the term. Cellular, it happens inside the cell. Respiration, well, what is respiration? It's taking in oxygen and putting out carbon dioxide. Now we know this happens, but does it happen in a plant? Of course it does, because remember, the mitochondrion is the powerhouse of the cell. So plants need energy. Don't think because they stand in one place they don't need energy. Animals need energy, plants need much less, but they still need energy. So between the outer and the inner membrane for cellular respiration, we have our first phase, and that is called oxidative phosphorylation. It's actually phase 3, but it happens on the outside between those two membranes. Here in the middle, we have this is called the mitochondrial, means inside the mitochondria, mitochondrial matrix. It's like the mush inside the mitochondria. And that mitochondrial matrix is where we have another phase that takes place. And this phase is definitely phase 2, and it's called the Krebs Cycle. It's named after this chap called Krebs. And then phase 1, we have here in the cytoplasm. So instead of calling it the cytoplasm, we're going to call it the cytosol. In other words, it's the cytoplasmic solution that's around, all the way around the mitochondria. And that's where the first phase takes place. And that first phase is called Glycolysis. Now, are you paying attention? Please pay attention. Lysis, that lysis means to split. So photo means light, synthesis means to make, okay? Cellular, to do with the cell. Intracellular, inside the cell. Intercellular, between the cells, okay? And any word that has lysis, you know it means to split. So the lysis means to split. What do you think glyco comes from? Maybe glucose? There we go. So glycolysis is to split the glucose. So the glucose that was produced by the plant, because it is autotrophic, it makes its own food, all right? It takes that glucose and it stores it as starch. Why? Starch doesn't affect water. It's not dissolved. It's a granule. So the water goes around the starch, so it doesn't affect water potential. Okay? Here, glycolysis, first step, to split the glucose molecule. Okay? So that there are little smaller pieces to work with. Then the glucose is carried into the mitochondrial matrix for the Krebs cycle. The cycle was figured out by a guy called Krebs, okay? So it's written with a capital letter and it's an apostrophe S because it belongs to him, the Krebs cycle. So it breaks that glucose down even more. And the energy, you remember the sunlight energy that was trapped in that glucose? That's why we call glucose chemical potential energy. Now we're going to release it. We split the glucose, we take the pieces so we can carry them into the middle of the mitochondria, okay, to the mitochondrial matrix. The Krebs cycle happens, and then the bits and pieces are taken in between this double membrane, which has an increased surface area because of the cristae, and we have oxidative phosphorylation. Now think, oxidative means we need oxygen. phosphorylation to make ATP. So when there's phosphorylation, what is phosphorylation? We're making ATP. And that's what happens there. So if we look at what cellular respiration is, what that whole process ends up being, I haven't got time to write it. So cellular respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis. We're going to take glucose and we're going to take oxygen, all right? This happens in plants and animals. And together with a whole bunch of enzymes, we are then going to break that glucose up into energy, which is ATP, carbon dioxide, which we breathe out, and so do plants, and water vapor. Now, if you take a piece of glass and you go onto that piece of glass, you're going to see water vapor. So we exhale carbon dioxide, water vapor, and why does cellular respiration occur inside a cell? To make energy for all life processes. So photosynthesis, cellular respiration have the opposite process. That's all you need to remember. And next week, we're carrying on with the cells and we're going to go into detail with the animal cell. Okay, until then, have a good one.
Oh, we've still got 3 minutes left, you see.
I thought we had no time left.
No, Kathy, we've got 3 minutes left.
Okay.
You know what, this is good. You want to carry on, you don't want a question, you just want to carry on.
No,
hey?
no, I just want to write this formula down.
We've got 3
so
minutes,
what?
guys.
So we've got,
Kathy.
sorry, I thought we had no time. I was quite convinced I was being counted down to nothing.
No, you've got 3 minutes.
We go, this is cellular respiration. We go glucose, which is C6H12O6, plus oxygen, which is what's inhaled, is going to, with enzymes and reactions, that's going to end up with ATP, which is the whole reason this happens, is ATP, which is energy, plus carbon dioxide, plus water, and that water is in the form of vapor. Okay, so there's the energy, there's the carbon dioxide, and there's the water. And that's what comes out of plants as well. And if you look at this formula, the exact reverse is photosynthesis. So what are they going to do? Plant takes water from the soil, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, energy, all right? And it takes all of that, the energy from the sun, to make glucose, which is food, and oxygen, which is released for us to breathe. All right, people, so remember, plants are going to release far less oxygen, and they're going to use a whole bunch, lots of oxygen, but they're going to release a little bit of carbon dioxide. Why? Because they're using our carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, and that's why we end up with oxygen to breathe. Because plants need less energy, they're going to give off less carbon dioxide.
Okay,
and there
Kathy,
you go.
well done. You see what you can do with 3 extra minutes, guys. A lot. Kathy can spread those 3 minutes. Well done, Kathy. Okay, guys, grade 10s, I know that this is the end of our session, and I know that you've got a few questions on the page. If there's anything that you're still struggling with, just let us know, and we'll find a way to we'll get one of our expert teachers to write out an answer for you. Guys, we've got to go. Thank you so much, grade 10s. Grade 11s, don't forget that you're on next, and that's an exciting show. See you next week, grade 10s. Bye.